My brother picked up a bronze artifact from the black market that could communicate with ancient people when filled with water. He sweet-talked a noble lady into crossing over to our time. The time-traveling woman was virtuous, gentle, and poised. My brother was extremely pleased and boasted everywhere about getting a wife without paying a bride price. Later, he wanted to repeat the trick and emulate the ancients by having multiple wives and concubines. I advised my brother to use the bronze artifact cautiously, but he thought I was narrow-minded and jealous of his treasure. Worried that I might ruin his plans and expose his secret, he teamed up with our mother and pushed me out the window. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. This time, I was cautious with my words and actions, but my brother was the one who regretted it. "Mom, do you think I should trick another time-traveling woman over? Winnie's dowry is almost gone." "I think it's a good idea. After all, they're undocumented. We can manipulate them however we want, trick a few more, and I can hold my grandson sooner." The moment I opened my eyes, I found myself standing at the door, overhearing my brother and mother scheming. I took 2 steps back in horror but accidentally bumped into my sister-in-law, who was passing by. She quickly steadied me and smiled. "What's wrong, Sarah?" Looking at her beautiful face, I couldn't help but shudder. In my previous life, when my brother pushed me out the window, my sister-in-law had been watching me from another window in the same way. I never expected the pain of falling from a great height hadn't even faded before I was reborn. Hearing the noise, my mother hurriedly pushed the door open. "What are you two doing here? How long have you been standing there?" She was afraid my sister-in-law had overheard her conversation with my brother. I forced a smile and pointed to the fruit peel on the ground, explaining, "I slipped and fell, and sister-in-law happened to pass by and helped me up." My mother looked suspiciously at my sister-in-law. She smiled and nodded. Seeing that we hadn't heard anything, my mother relaxed and dismissed us with a few words, then continued discussing their next steps with my brother. Watching her retreating figure, I clenched my fists, hatred surging in my heart. They thought they were cunning, but they were merely setting the stage for someone else. In my previous life, when my brother went to the black market with his friends, he encountered a mad Taoist priest. The priest smashed my brother's phone and compensated him with a bronze artifact. He said that if it was filled with water, a miracle would occur. My brother didn't believe him. He demanded compensation from the priest, but the priest vanished in the blink of an eye, left with no choice. My brother brought the bronze artifact home. Out of curiosity, he followed the priest's instructions. To his surprise, after the water rippled a few times, a scene appeared. A beauty with long hair, seemingly preparing to dress up, appeared. Seeing my brother, she was terrified and demanded to know who he was and why he was in her bronze basin. My brother was mesmerized, taking a long time to realize that the bronze artifact allowed him to communicate with someone else. Later, he learned from the beauty that she lived in an ancient dynasty we knew nothing about. Now that she was growing older, her parents were forcing her to marry a 50-year-old official as his second wife. She was unwilling but had no choice. Upon hearing this, my brother pounded his chest in frustration, consumed by jealousy. After all, he was 30 and still couldn't find a girlfriend, while others could have multiple wives and concubines. My mother casually remarked, "If this thing is so magical, wouldn't it be great if we could bring that girl here? We could save on the betrothal gifts and avoid all the hassle." My brother took it to heart. He explored the functions of the bronze artifact and eventually discovered inscriptions at the bottom. It read that the artifact was called a spiritual connector, capable of linking to ancient times, transmitting objects, and even enabling time travel. Overjoyed, my brother used sweet words to deceive the beauty. He told her that in our era, everyone was equal, and women could study and work. Moreover, monogamy was practiced. If she could travel to our time, she would no longer suffer from constraints. The beauty was deeply captivated by the idea. However, the thought of leaving her homeland made her hesitate. Seeing this, my brother used the bronze vessel to send over some cheap cosmetics he bought online to express his admiration. The beauty was so moved that she immediately sent back her gold hairpin. My mother took it to the gold shop and had it melted into a large gold bracelet for herself. Grinning from ear to ear, after a few exchanges, our family managed to buy a new house with the gold and silver jewelry the beauty sent over. Later, my brother invited the beauty to come over again. The beauty blushed and agreed, eventually becoming my sister-in-law, dressed in wedding attire. My sister-in-law was stunningly beautiful. My brother, who had never seen such a beauty before, naturally doted on her in every way, but he forbade her from going out and from using the internet. The freedom he had promised turned out to be a lie. When she asked, he would say that she was now an undocumented person and couldn't do anything. my sister-in-law fell silent and didn't press further, but in private, she borrowed my old school textbooks and asked me to teach her how to read and write. Feeling sorry for her being far from home, I agreed. She studied very diligently and often asked me questions. When my brother saw this, he sneered, "What's the point of learning this? You can't even go to school." Unexpectedly, my sister-in-law replied softly, "I just want to have more topics to discuss with my husband." Hearing such a flattering response, my brother became smug and stopped bothering about her studies. But my mother was unhappy. She was afraid my sister-in-law would run away. So she constantly made her, a young lady from a noble family who had never done manual work, cook and do laundry. My sister-in-law accepted it all and did it so well that my mother couldn't find any fault. When my brother found out, he was extremely pleased and frequently invited friends over for meals, always having my sister-in-law prepare a large table of dishes. His friends were mesmerized when they saw her. Hearing that she hadn't asked for the traditional 3 golds as a betrothal gift, they eagerly asked my brother where he had found such a wife and whether she had any sisters of marriageable age. My brother just smiled without answering, his eyes full of pride, but the good times didn't last. My sister-in-law failed to conceive a child for a long time. My brother gradually grew dissatisfied. He started staying away from home often. My mother also made sarcastic remarks about my sister-in-law's inability to bear children, and because the dowry my sister-in-law had brought was almost squandered by my brother, they decided to trick another young lady from a noble family into coming. In my previous life, I accidentally overheard their conversation at the door and rushed in to dissuade them. Although the bronze vessel was miraculous, every time my brother used it, a faint black mist would envelop him. As he used it more, the black mist grew stronger. Others couldn't see it, but I could. Suspecting the old Taoist priest had ulterior motives and feeling sorry for my sister-in-law being alone in a foreign world, I urged my brother to treat her well. Unexpectedly, my mother slapped me across the face, accusing me of having ill intentions. She also said that even if my brother had no children, I wouldn't get a single penny of the family's wealth. Unable to defend myself, I could only leave in despair. But my brother didn't let me off. Worried that I would leak their secret and ruin his plans, he teamed up with my mother one night and pushed me out the window, making it look like I had committed suicide. As I fell, I saw the light in my sister-in-law's room turn on. She stood by the window, looking at me with the same smile as always, but her eyes were much colder. It was then I realized that my sister-in-law wasn't weak and easily bullied. She was just waiting for an opportunity. To think that ancient people are inherently inferior to modern people is true foolishness. Fortunately, I've been given a second chance. In this life, I will personally witness them bring about their own downfall, without my interference. At the dinner table, my brother suddenly asked, "Winnie, do you have a younger sister at home?" My sister-in-law paused, then smiled and said, "Yes, husband. Wendy is 2 years younger than me and should be of marriageable age now." A glint of joy flashed in my mother's eyes, though she feigned concern on her face. "Ah, in that cannibalistic era of yours, women have no good days after marriage. How can you bear to let your sister suffer like that? Why not invite your sister over too? Our family can live well together." My sister-in-law remained silent. My brother grew anxious, clearing his throat lightly. "Winnie, look at what you wear and use now. Isn't everything better than before? Even though you're an undocumented immigrant and can't find a job, our family hasn't looked down on you. Instead, we've provided you with good food and comfort. What more could you be dissatisfied with? Mom means well. She doesn't want your sister to suffer." My sister-in-law smiled gently. "My husband is right. Everything I have today is thanks to you, as long as you know it." My brother lifted his chin, looking down on her with an air of superiority. He completely forgot that our family's current status was entirely built on my sister-in-law's dowry. My sister-in-law frowned in thought for a moment before saying, "I understand my husband's kindness, but I must ask for Wendy's opinion." My brother and my mother exchanged glances and agreed. Before crossing over, my sister-in-law had left her bronze basin to her sister. My brother, on the other hand, had stored his bronze artifact in a safe, usually forbidding others from touching it. This time, he finally took it out. Because my brother was present, my sister-in-law didn't speak with her sister for long. The next day, my sister-in-law told us that her sister had agreed. My brother was overjoyed and instructed, "Tell your sister to bring plenty of gold, silver, and jewelry when she comes." After a pause of a few seconds, he added by way of explanation, "In this world, it's always advantageous to have more wealth on hand." My sister-in-law nodded. However, according to the inscriptions, the one who crosses over must be actively invited by the other party, and each person can only extend one invitation. My brother was stumped, his eyes kept shifting between me and my mother. In the distance, my sister-in-law lifted her head and shook it almost imperceptibly. I was taken aback for a moment, then, catching on, pretended to be excited. "Brother, let me do it. I haven't witnessed the power of this treasure yet. It'll be a good chance for me to learn how to use it." I showed a covetous smile. Alarm bells rang in my brother's mind, and he quickly refused. "Let Mom do it." Afraid that I might develop greedy intentions, I pretended to be disappointed and lowered my head. On the day Wendy arrived, a layer of black mist appeared around my mother's body, but she didn't notice it at all, busy only with locking the jewelry Wendy brought into the safe, because Wendy was radiant and captivating. My brother's gaze remained fixed on her the entire evening. In the middle of the night, he slipped into Wendy's room, but he was driven out by my sister-in-law. Though my sister-in-law appeared gentle and delicate, her tone was firm. She said that even though Wendy was 16, by modern standards, she was still a minor. My brother was furious, but afraid that even a rabbit will bite when cornered. He had no choice but to let it go for the time being. His dream of having multiple wives and concubines shattered, he felt deeply dissatisfied and began squandering Wendy's dowry on wild living outside. My sister-in-law didn't seem heartbroken. Like women in ancient times, she silently endured her husband's womanizing. My brother was quite pleased with her acceptance and became even more absent from home. It was only when my mother insisted that he come back for meals that he reluctantly returned, but as soon as he came back, he froze, staring at my sister-in-law in shock and suspicion. "Why do you look different?" I instinctively glanced at my sister-in-law and was startled too. Since we were always together, I hadn't noticed any changes, but looking closely today, I realized that my sister-in-law now bore a slight resemblance to my brother. Her face, once stunningly beautiful, had become merely pretty in a modest way. My sister-in-law was taken aback, covering her face slightly as she replied with a smile, "Perhaps my husband hasn't seen me for so long that I seem unfamiliar." My brother stared intently at her and shook his head. "Something's not right. Your eyes used to be so big, and your nose was so straight. Now, how?" My brother pondered hard, then accidentally caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror and suddenly understood. "How come you look a bit like me now?" As soon as he said it, he himself froze for a moment. After processing it, my brother looked suspiciously at my sister-in-law. When I came back, I ran into an old fortune teller on the overpass. He said I'd faced some misfortune recently and told me to pay attention to anything unusual around me. "Could he have been talking about you?" My sister-in-law's smile stiffened. I put down my bowl and chopsticks and quickly interjected, "Brother, what nonsense are you talking? Those fortune tellers are all just scamming people for money. Besides, you and sister-in-law are married. Isn't it normal for married couples to start looking alike?" A flicker of confusion passed through my brother's eyes. "Is that so?" "Of course." I pulled up a science video on my phone and showed it to him. "See, there's even scientific evidence for this. When two people are together for a long time, they start to resemble each other more and more." I glanced at my brother and muttered, "If sister-in-law weren't completely devoted to you, why would she stay with our family? For your advanced age, or because you don't bathe?" My mother heard this and rapped my hand sharply with her chopsticks, scolding, "Stop talking nonsense." My brother thought it over carefully and found it reasonable. After all, everything our family had now was bought with my sister-in-law's dowry. She hadn't shown a hint of reluctance. There was no doubt she was a lovesick fool. Then, my brother seemed rather distressed. My sister-in-law, who had been such a beauty, had now dimmed considerably because of this couple resemblance. This disrupted his subsequent plans. In my previous life, I'd overheard him discussing with my mother that once he grew tired of my sister-in-law, they would sell her off. Now that her looks had changed, her price would naturally drop significantly. After feeling sorry for a while, my brother turned his gaze toward Wendy. Wendy was as pretty as ever. My brother's eyes gleamed with desire, but before he could say anything, Wendy quickly finished her meal and retreated to her room, avoiding my brother like the plague. My brother was very displeased. In his view, Wendy was one of his future concubines. She just wasn't of age yet. Right after dinner, my brother got a call from his friend Bob. "Chiangzi, I've lined up a few hot girls today. Really spicy, get over here quick." Hearing this, my brother grew restless. Ignoring my mother's attempts to dissuade him, he turned and headed out. In his eyes, my sister-in-law, who was no longer as beautiful as before, had lost her appeal. My mother was furious. Pointing at my sister-in-law, she started cursing, blaming her for not being able to keep a man. My sister-in-law kept her head down and didn't resist. But unexpectedly, the next day, News came that my brother had gotten into trouble. He'd gotten into a fight at a bar over a woman and ended up in the hospital. My mother was frantic with worry and immediately prepared to take me to the hospital, leaving my sister-in-law and Wendy at home. I paused for a moment and advised, "Mom, we don't know how long brother will be in the hospital this time. Sister-in-law is meticulous. Bringing her along would make it easier to care for him." My mother hesitated. After all, both she and my brother didn't want my sister-in-law to have contact with the outside world, but in the end, she agreed. It was my sister-in-law's first time going out, and she was curious about everything. I quietly explained various things to her from behind. After listening for a while, my sister-in-law smiled and said, "This era is really wonderful. I knew I came to the right place." My mother curled her lip. "Of course. It's nothing like your barren, backward dynasty. When John gets better, you two should hurry up and have a child, someone like you, who can't bear children. In the old days, you'd have been divorced. It's only because our family is kind-hearted that we're still keeping you." My mother seized the opportunity to criticize her, but it didn't dampen my sister-in-law's good mood. Since she rarely had the chance to go out, I took the opportunity to explain more things to her. At the hospital, the doctor said my brother's leg was broken and he would need to stay in the hospital for a while to recover. My mother was crying and wailing, insisting on going to confront someone. It took us a long time to calm her down. At first, she came to see my brother every day, but later, her mahjong friends urged her to play, so she passed the task to my sister-in-law. She also asked me to supervise on the side. My sister-in-law bore all the hardships without complaint, waking up early every day to prepare soup and bring it to the hospital, and because she had seized every opportunity to study at home before, she quickly adapted to life outside. She handled all my brother's affairs at the hospital. All the other patients praised my sister-in-law for her kindness. On the day my brother was discharged from the hospital, Bob came to pick him up. Who would have thought that Bob would walk straight toward my sister-in-law, putting his arm around her shoulders? My brother was stunned and quickly separated them, shouting, "What are you doing?" Bob froze for a few seconds, looking at my brother and then at my sister-in-law. Before realizing he had mistaken my sister-in-law for my brother, he repeatedly apologized. Sorry, I got the wrong person." My brother's face turned ashen, and he gave Bob a cold look. Bob kept trying to make amends. He himself couldn't understand why, with my brother standing right there, he had mistaken my sister-in-law for my brother. In the end, he could only blame it on having drunk too much the night before and not being fully sober. I watched coldly from the side and noticed that the dark mist around my brother had grown even thicker, obscuring half of his face. What I didn't understand was why the dark mist around him had intensified, even though he hadn't used the bronze artifact during this time. My gaze shifted to my sister-in-law, who was packing things nearby. Seeing her busy, I went over to help. After pouring out the unfinished chicken soup from the thermos, I noticed a faint bronze fragment stuck to the bottom. I froze for a moment. My sister-in-law, however, gave me an ambiguous smile. Because my brother had difficulty moving, he stayed at home after being discharged from the hospital, but Wendy was nowhere to be found. We searched every room in the house but couldn't find her. My brother flew into a rage and questioned my sister-in-law. "Where is Wendy?" My sister-in-law's eyes reddened slightly. "Husband, I really don't know where Wendy is." My brother didn't believe her and, in his anger, slapped her. I quickly stepped in to protect my sister-in-law. "Brother, sister-in-law has been with me every day. She really doesn't know." My brother tried to push me away but accidentally fell himself, taking a long time to get up. He pointed at us and unleashed a torrent of abuse. After all, Wendy's escape was a minor issue, but if the secret were exposed, it would be a big problem. It was also because Wendy had been too obedient before that my brother and the others gradually let their guard down, giving Wendy the chance to escape. My brother immediately called my mother, but my mother arrived late. When she returned, she took my sister-in-law to a room to lecture her. After this incident, my brother behaved much more cautiously for a while. He was terrified that someone would come to the house demanding the bronze artifact and lived in fear for some time. Fortunately, no one came, but his attitude toward my sister-in-law visibly worsened, and he no longer allowed her to leave the house. After all, anyone would be angry if a duck that was almost in their mouth flew away. And because my sister-in-law couldn't bear children, he spent all day discussing with my mother how to deal with her. I overheard them a few times, and each time, I felt anxious. I didn't know if my sister-in-law had noticed, but she acted as usual. Late one night, my brother suddenly decided to take my sister-in-law out. Hearing the noise, I quickly got up and asked, "Where are you going?" My brother made an impatient sound. "None of your business." My sister-in-law gave me a reassuring look, but I still felt uneasy. I followed them and saw my brother arguing with a middle-aged man. The man accused my brother of being dishonest, saying he had promised to deliver a beautiful girl but had instead brought someone who looked like my brother. Such an appearance wouldn't fetch a high price at all. My brother was taken aback and looked at my sister-in-law with suspicion. After all, in his eyes, she only bore a slight resemblance to him, not an exact likeness. Just as he was about to say something, a deranged old woman suddenly rushed up to him, shouting and screaming. Her hair was disheveled, and she reeked of a foul odor. My brother pinched his nose in disgust and told her to get lost, but the woman was extremely persistent, making it impossible for my brother and the middle-aged man to continue their conversation. At that moment, the police arrived. The man immediately tried to run but was caught by the police. Realizing what had happened, he cursed at my brother. "You bastard. You actually called the police." My brother looked utterly confused. Seeing that my sister-in-law was out of danger, I breathed a sigh of relief and quickly stepped forward. "Officer, I was the one who called the police." I glanced at my brother and continued, "My brother asked me to call. We were conducting a sting operation, to avoid being held responsible." My brother had no choice but to go along with it and admit that he had instructed me to call the police. When we were taken to the police station to give our statements, the deranged woman clung tightly to my brother's leg. She was shouting and screaming, but no one could understand what she was saying. My brother, furious, kicked her away. The old woman lay on the ground, wailing in pain. Out of sympathy, I crouched down and handed her a few tissues. As I stood up, I unexpectedly caught what she was saying. She was shouting, "John." My face turned pale. After leaving the police station, my brother was seething with anger. He locked my sister-in-law in a room and was about to lecture me. My mother stopped him, saying she was afraid the situation would escalate and the neighbors would find out. My brother had no choice but to let it go for the time being, though he shot me several fierce glares. After hesitating for a few seconds, he asked my mother, "Does Winnie look a lot like me now?" My mother thought carefully for a moment. Her face filled with terror. "Now that you mention it, she does. I hadn't noticed it before. The more someone is affected by the dark mist, the less they can perceive the changes." Hearing this, my brother grew anxious. Could that old man's words actually be true? Is Winnie really some kind of anomaly? He paced back and forth anxiously in the house. After a while, he glanced at the room where my sister-in-law was locked and made a decision. "I need to go ask that fortune-teller." Early the next morning, he rushed out the door. The fortune-teller was still on the overpass. Just as expected, my brother handed him a considerable amount of money before the old man slowly spoke. "You are about to be replaced." My brother's eyes widened. "Master, what do you mean?" The old man remained silent, waiting for my brother to slip him more money before continuing. "Have you used a bronze artifact?" My brother quickly nodded and told him everything that had happened recently. The old man sighed. "By using the bronze artifact to invite someone, you were actually inviting her to replace you. For people like her from another world to stay in this world, there's only one way, to replace someone else. Now, she's only one step away from completing her claim. As long as she gains the acknowledgement of the two people closest to you, she will completely become you." My brother's face turned pale, and he pleaded, "Master, you have to save me." The old man fell silent again. Looking very troubled, my brother gritted his teeth and transferred all the money he had to the old man. Seeing the amount, the old man smiled with satisfaction. "It's not too late yet. As long as you can stop her from completing her claim, you'll be fine. If it's too late, smash the bronze artifact and come find me again." Overjoyed, my brother rushed home, but when he went to the safe to retrieve the bronze artifact, he found my sister-in-law, who should have been locked in the room, sitting on the sofa. My mother was sitting beside her. My brother was stunned and accused, "Mom, why did you let her out?" Before my mother could answer, my sister-in-law smiled at him and then looked at me. "Sarah, who am I?" My brother's face turned pale. "Sarah, don't say anything reckless." He stared at me intently, afraid that I would acknowledge my sister-in-law's identity. I looked up and saw that my brother's face was almost completely obscured by the dark mist. In a daze, I suddenly remembered an old incident and asked, "That year when I was 5, you said you wanted to play hide-and-seek with me, but I never found you. Instead, I ended up waiting for a human trafficker and almost got kidnapped. Did you call him here?" My brother immediately denied it, but his expression seemed guilty. Having gotten my answer, I sneered inwardly twice and continued asking, "The year of the college entrance exam, I missed 2 exams because of food poisoning and ultimately couldn't get into university. Did you tamper with the food? My brother still refused to admit it, but his expression was equally unnatural. My past doubts had been answered. I clenched my fists, and the hatred in my heart surged once again. I looked at my sister-in-law and acknowledged her identity. My brother's face turned ashen as he rushed up to me and roared, "Are you insane?" He raised his hand to strike me, but I grabbed a vase from the table and smashed it against his head. He was left bleeding and stared at me in disbelief. My sister-in-law then asked my mother, "Mom, who am I?" My brother laughed mockingly. "Don't even dream about it. There's no way Mom would acknowledge you." But the next second, my mother replied, "You are John, my son." As soon as she finished speaking, my brother's face was completely covered by the dark mist. My brother's expression froze, his eyes wide with rage. "Mom, do you even know what you're saying? I'm your son." My mother didn't answer. Instead, she made a habitual gesture of Wendy's. My brother stood stunned for 2 seconds, then stumbled backward in fear, his face looking as if he'd seen a ghost. "You're not my mom." "Where is my mom?" I sneered. "Didn't you just see her yesterday? Not only that, you kicked her hard." Those who are replaced gradually lose their original appearance and memories. "That's why I didn't recognize my mother at first yesterday." My brother recalled the madwoman who had grabbed his pant leg and said in disbelief, "That's impossible. You clearly need to seek acknowledgement to succeed." "I never acknowledged you," Wendy giggled. "Good son. Didn't you acknowledge me when you called me, back when Wendy went missing?" My brother frantically called my mother. On the phone, the person on the other end asked, "Who am I?" Although my brother found it strange, hearing my mother's voice, he still replied, "You're my mom." "Mom, stop joking. Wendy is missing. You need to come back quickly." Thinking back on it now, my brother was filled with regret. He glared at me with resentment in his eyes. "Sarah, you heartless ingrate. Mom raised you for so many years. What did she ever do to wrong you? I was tricked into acknowledging her." "What about you?" I sneered. "In the face of your interests, I'm completely insignificant, disposable at any moment. If you had successfully sold off my sister-in-law, would the next step have been to deal with me, the one who knows the truth?" My brother's face changed slightly, unable to understand how I had guessed their plan. From the day I returned, I had made up my mind to make sure they faced retribution. Only those tainted by the dark mist can be replaced, but to reach the stage of seeking acknowledgement, one must wait until the person is almost completely consumed by the dark mist. I couldn't wait that long. Knowing my mother loved playing mahjong, I often went to the mahjong parlor to bring her things. I also casually let slip that our family was very wealthy. Everyone else started flattering my mother. She became so proud that she overlooked the strange looks others gave her. So the news spread like wildfire. Soon, someone targeted my mother as an easy mark. They set up a scheme together and made my mother lose a lot of money. When my mother ran out of money, she secretly sold my sister-in-law's and the others' jewelry, but she and my brother squandered everything recklessly, and soon there were only a few pieces left. At this point, my mother regained some of her senses, afraid that my brother would discover the missing jewelry from the safe. She didn't dare go out to play mahjong for several days. Seeing her so downcast, I told her that all she needed to do was replenish the jewelry. If my brother could use the bronze artifacts, so could she. Moreover, before Wendy traveled through time, she had given her bronze basin to a loyal servant. That person would help my sister-in-law in times of trouble. Upon hearing this, my mother immediately called Wendy over to ask. Once she confirmed it was true, she quietly took my brother's safe key. Once became twice. My mother's gambling addiction grew worse and worse. Ordinary amounts of money no longer satisfied her psychologically, because she was influenced by the dark mist and spent all her time with Wendy. She didn't notice that Wendy was becoming more and more like her. Naturally, my sister-in-law and I didn't bring it up, so before long, Wendy completed the ritual of replacement. Afterward, I once asked her, was it worth it to go from a young girl to a 50-year-old woman? She smiled and said, "This era is wonderful. I can study, I can work, I can do anything I want, even if I only live for 10 years. It's better than living 40 years in that world. Besides, what's wrong with being an old woman? No one dares to bully an old woman." She winked at me, looking as if she had gotten a great deal. My thoughts returned to the present, and I looked at my brother. He glared at me viciously, as if he wished he could tear me to pieces. Suddenly, as if remembering something, a flicker of delight flashed in his eyes, and he cursed, "Don't think you'll succeed." He went to the storage room, took out a hammer, and smashed the bronze artifacts to pieces. My sister-in-law and Wendy's eyes instantly lit up. Unaware, my brother snarled, the fortune teller said that if the bronze artifacts are destroyed, there's still hope for me to recover, paired with his bloody, miserable appearance. He looked somewhat like a malevolent ghost. My sister-in-law gave an enigmatic smile and said, "That fortune teller you mentioned, did he have a black mole on his face?" My brother was taken aback. "How did you know?" My sister-in-law continued. "And the deranged Taoist who gave you the bronze artifacts, did he also have a black mole on his face?" My brother froze, and when he finally understood, he said in disbelief, "Impossible. They look completely different," instead of answering directly. My sister-in-law kicked my brother out of the house, saying, "Our home doesn't welcome outsiders, you may leave." My brother was furious. "This is my home, you're the outsider, you bitch, open the door." He kept pounding on the door, but we all ignored him. The neighbors heard the noise and came out to look, but they were so frightened by my brother's appearance that they retreated back inside, when no one paid him any attention. My brother screamed and raged for a long time before deciding to go find the fortune teller and get some answers, but he searched every corner under the overpass and couldn't find him. My sister-in-law told me that she had once saved that Taoist. Before leaving, the Taoist gave her a bronze basin, explained how to use it, and said that he would repay her one day, but a long time passed, and the Taoist never reappeared. Gradually, my sister-in-law forgot about the matter. Little did she expect that the repayment would come just before her wedding. She also never thought she would see that Taoist again in this world. Similarly, my brother never imagined that only he could destroy the bronze artifacts. Once the bronze artifacts were destroyed, the transaction was complete, and the replacement became irreversible. Passers-by, seeing my brother's bloody and battered state, quickly called the police. My brother was taken to the hospital by the police. Seizing the opportunity, he told them that his home had been taken over. The police brought him back home, and my sister-in-law opened the door. My brother was extremely agitated. "Officer, it's this person." He told the police the truth, even showing his ID to prove that he was John and that my sister-in-law was the one who had usurped his place. But he didn't know that after being replaced, he would lose his original appearance. Now, he looked nothing like the person in his ID photo. His words would only make others think he was talking nonsense. My sister-in-law looked apologetic as she told the police that she had lost her ID card. She reached out to take it, but my brother held it tightly and refused to let go. Hearing her twist the truth, he was so enraged that he lunged at her. The police quickly stopped him. In the midst of the argument, Bob suddenly showed up at our house. My brother seemed to see a savior and shouted, "Bob, you're here. Tell the police who John really is." Bob looked confused and glanced at my sister-in-law. "John, who is this person?" My sister-in-law shook her head. "I don't know either. He's just some madman who suddenly showed up at our house." My brother was furious. He took out his phone and pointed at the call log, saying, "Bob, we just talked on the phone yesterday. Have you forgotten?" Bob was taken aback. My sister-in-law frowned. "When I went out, I lost my phone too. I didn't expect you to pick it up. You're lying." My brother glared at her angrily. Hearing the commotion from inside the house, I came out and said calmly, "If you say this is your phone, can you unlock it with your fingerprint?" "Of course I can." My brother placed his finger on the screen, but it showed an unlock failure. He tried a few more times, but it still failed. My sister-in-law snatched the phone and unlocked it with her own fingerprint. My brother was dumbfounded. At that moment, he realized he had been completely replaced. Moreover, he was no longer his former self. Witnessing this farce, the police suspected my brother was a madman who had escaped. They asked him if he remembered where his home was and if he had any contact information for his family. My brother made a scene, insisting that this was his home and that I was his family. Gradually, the police lost patience with him. Ignoring his resistance, they forcibly took him away. As soon as they left, my sister-in-law made an excuse to decline Bob's invitation to hang out and sent him out the door. Bob scratched his head, confused, and could only assume my brother had been disturbed by a madman. Back inside, I asked my sister-in-law about her plans moving forward. She gently stroked a textbook, looked up at me, and said, "Sarah, do you want to take the college entrance exam again? No one can stop you now." I was stunned. Did I want to go to college? I had dreamed of it, but I was already 25 years old. My sister-in-law noticed my hesitation and smiled. "Age isn't a problem, isn't that what you told us?" She took my hand and Wendy's, placing them together. "We were a family before, and we still are now. Thank you, Sarah. Without you, Wendy and I wouldn't have made it this far." I nodded, but I couldn't stop my eyes from turning red. A year later, I was admitted to college. My sister-in-law was overjoyed and cooked a feast for me. She said she and Wendy would catch up with me soon. When they saw me off to school, I saw two people I hadn't seen in a long time, my brother and my mother. Both of them were acting erratically, fighting fiercely. The fruit stall owner nearby noticed me staring and added a few words. No one knows where these two came from. They scavenge for food when they're hungry and sleep under bridges when they're tired. I silently watched them. It wasn't as if my brother hadn't tried to find us afterward, but every time, my sister-in-law drove him away. Eventually, we even sold the house and moved somewhere he couldn't find us. Gradually, he lost his memory, forgot his own name, and was left with only the instinct to survive. Perhaps it was fate between mother and son. He and my mother met. They wandered around this area, bullied by others. The retribution I had hoped for had finally come. And my new life was just beginning. I looked up at my sister-in-law, said goodbye, and told her I would take good care of myself. For the rest of my life, I will live only for myself. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My nickname is Pig Girl, because every boyfriend I've ever dated has been ridiculously fat, weighing at least 200 pounds each. With every step they take, the fat on their bodies jiggles, yet, I relish it, giving them whatever they want. People call me foolish for insisting on marrying a boyfriend who weighs over 400 pounds. Even my mother cried and threatened to cut ties with me. I just giggled and said, "Mom, the pig I'm raising is ready for slaughter again." I met a boyfriend online, and today was our first face-to-face meeting. The photo on his phone screen showed a sports student with an 8-pack. But sitting across the table was a middle-aged man weighing over 200 pounds. The man in front of me was sweating profusely, his greasy hair strands sticking to his face, and he kept fanning himself with his thick, fleshy palms. "Rose, the weather is so hot today." I took the subway for 8 whole stops, and it cost me over $10. I gave him a concerned look, my eyes brimming with affection. "Baby, you're so sweet to come all this way just to see me," the man chuckled, his greasy gaze drifting toward my chest. Before I could react, he had already wrapped his arm around my waist. But when it was time to pay for dinner, he pulled a disappearing act, vanishing without a trace. The server looked at me with a sympathetic smile, while I paid the bill without any expression. After dinner, we went to see a movie together. It was a cliché romance film that had me yawning non-stop. The man beside me laughed suggestively and whispered in my ear, "Wifey, are you really 16 this year?" I opened my phone camera, looked at my reflection, a girl with twin pigtails and a pink dress, and nodded with certainty. The man's smile widened. "Baby, you're so pretty. From now on, I'll buy you any skin you want." "Baby, you must be thirsty. I bought you a cola." I took the cola, and the man beside me watched me expectantly. I twisted the cap lightly and easily opened it. I cooed at him, "Hubby, you're so thoughtful. You know I'm not strong. So you opened it for me." The man chuckled again, his eyes fixed intently on the cola bottle. "Baby, drink it quickly. Cola tastes bad once it goes flat." I obliged, taking a big gulp. The soda had a strange taste to it. Not long after drinking it, I started feeling dizzy and sleepy. "Baby, what's wrong? Do you want me to take you somewhere to rest?" The man feigned concern, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. The corners of my mouth twitched upward too. "Perfect. It's almost time to slaughter the pig." I collapsed into the man's arms, letting him take me to a shabby, run-down hotel. He threw me onto the bed and tried to tear off my clothes. He opened his phone and sent a voice message. "Folks, I'll send you some benefits later. Today, I'm unboxing a little lowly." The next second, the lights went out. I opened my eyes and pulled out my gleaming pig slaughtering knife. I smiled sweetly. "Hubby, let me give you a little benefit first. Some pigs, though originally of poor quality, taste much better after being castrated." I took the old man back home. Under the moonlight, he had completely transformed into a pig. With a single slice of the knife, I cut through a thick layer of yellow fat. Nearby, an iron cage rattled incessantly. Inside was a half-human, half-pig monster. Its limbs and ears were entirely pig-like, but its face still vaguely resembled a human's. Save me," it rasped in a voice so hoarse and unpleasant it was utterly inhuman. I couldn't help but frown. I turned on the TV and cranked the volume to the max. The news was playing. UT's former captain, Frank, has been missing for 10 days following a sex scandal. Suspicions point to victim retaliation. I kicked the pig in the cage and muttered to myself, "It's been 10 days already. Why hasn't it gained any weight? If it doesn't gain weight, how can I sell it? What a waste of money." Some pigs are suitable for immediate slaughter, while some special ones need to be raised a bit longer before being killed. This one is just such a waste of money. The pig in the cage was still crying out hoarsely. If you kill me, you'll die too. I have so much influence. Everyone will definitely catch you. My fans will never let you go for the rest of their lives. So damn noisy. I stopped what I was doing and couldn't help but cover my ears with both hands. Stupid pig, shut up already. Why don't you take a look at what you look like now? The TV was still showing the photo of that missing idol. He was indeed quite handsome, with some good looks, but probably due to poor maintenance later on. His face had started to puff up, although his figure management wasn't great. It wasn't noticeable when he wore the right clothes. The pig was still saying, "My fans said they would love me until the end of time." I chuckled and said, "Oh, really? But I've been dead for 7 years. How are your fans going to catch me?" I wasn't trying to scare him. I really am dead. I was brutally murdered, thrown into a pigsty, and fed to the pigs as pig feed, leaving no trace of my remains. For years after I died, I suddenly bound myself to a pig slaughtering system. As long as I slaughter 10 pigs, I can be reborn in a new body. Some people who have committed heinous crimes are rejected by the living world and not accepted by the underworld. So pig butchers like me come to take their lives. People can turn into pigs because they carry the weight of human lives and endless resentment. Raising pigs for me means nurturing that resentment, once the resentment is sufficient. I send them on their way. The moment I finished speaking, Wu Fan had completely turned into a pig. He was the highest quality one I'd had in a long time, finally ready for slaughter. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Great, this is the 7th pig I've killed. After killing this one, I can go home. Waste of money. You finally know to come home. The middle-aged woman in front of me was furious, her eyes wide open. This is my mother. She's only in her early 40s. But half her hair has already turned white, aging terribly. In the years since I died, she's had a really hard time. My stepfather was beaten to death by debt collectors because of gambling debts. Aside from her and my brother, almost everyone in the family has died, and those still alive think she's bad luck. My mother looked me up and down, and her tone softened slightly. It's good that you know to come home. Your brother is 20 and still not married. If you, as his older sister, don't come back to help, no one will look favorably on our family. This is my mother's usual tactic. If things aren't going well, it's always because I haven't done enough. I stood at the door with my luggage, unable to hide the smile on my face. Mom, now that I'm back, I'll definitely help my brother find a good one. 7 years, I've finally come home. My mother called out behind her, "Precious, come help your sister with her things." My brother glanced at me and said resentfully, "Why bother with her things? Just throw them in the pigsty." She always slept in the pigsty when she was little anyway. Hearing my brother's words, my mother shot him a look. "What are you talking about? Put your sister's things in the very last room. It's been 7 years since I left, but home is still the same small, single-story house. The very last room used to be for storing miscellaneous items, and I never had a room of my own. Since I was little, I slept with the pigs." My mother said a fortune teller once told her that I was born with the fate of a pig, meant to be eaten by others. Why waste a good room? Better to sleep in the pigsty early on. I lay down on the small, old bed. Outside the window was the abandoned pigsty. Nowadays, no one in the countryside raises pigs anymore. Chattering voices reached my ears. "Mom, why are you getting mad at me because of that waste of money? Are you stupid? That worthless girl came home alone today. Clearly not married yet. Let's find her a husband, and the money for your wife and house will be sorted." "You're right, Mom, you always have the best ideas. Precious, let's humor her for a while. Look at how she's dressed. She's probably been up to no good out there and must have some money saved up." In just a few words, they had my future all planned out. How wonderful. My family hasn't changed a bit. This time, I didn't come back alone. When I brought Harry to meet my mom, her face instantly darkened because Harry was covered in layers of fat, ridiculously overweight. Harry was my middle school classmate. After failing the college entrance exam, he stayed at home living off his parents, playing video games all day. I added his gaming account and pestered him to play games with me every day. Over time, we became a couple. The only thing was, he still didn't know my true identity. When I was a child, I was malnourished, skinny, small, and always smelled bad. I was nothing like I am now. My mom was furious. The fortune teller was right. I let you sleep with the pigs when you were little, but I didn't mean for you to sleep with a pig when you grew up. I burst into tears, sobbing pitifully. "Mom, how can you say that about my boyfriend? Harry tightened his grip on my hand, his face, buried in fat, managed to squeeze out a smile. He tried to ingratiate himself with my mom, saying, "Mom, I'll treat Rose well." I turned to Harry with a touched expression, while my mom looked like she was about to faint on the spot. My brother came out then, pointing angrily at Harry and yelling, "What kind of fat pig dares to come propose to our family?" Harry's entire body trembled. He weighed over 400 pounds, but at my brother's shout, he shook with fear. He leaned over and whispered to me, "Baby, maybe I should go back first. I don't want to upset your mom." I could only nod helplessly. Harry's family lived in town, not far from here. Actually, Harry had been to my house before, but the village had changed so much, and I had moved. He had changed a lot too. Back in middle school, he came to my house with our homeroom teacher for a home visit. My mom and brother had gone to the market, so only my stepfather and I were home. When they arrived, I was in the pigsty, sleeping with the pigs. We've been together for 3 months, and he's gained nearly 300 pounds. Every time we eat, I cook a lot of meat dishes, and Harry loves them, but he used to have a metabolism that kept him from gaining weight, so he never worried about it and ate to his heart's content. Harry sometimes asks me, "Baby, will you still love me if I get fat?" I smile until my eyes curve like crescent moons. "Honey, you're not fat at all, it's just baby fat, so soft and cute." As soon as Harry left, my mom dragged me aside, and she and my brother started interrogating me. "Aren't you ashamed of dating a fat guy? I'm embarrassed for you." Yeah, how are Mom and I supposed to face people in the village if you keep this up?" I hung my head, looking miserable. "Mom, but I truly love him. He often cooks plain congee for me, and it makes me feel at home." My mom's eyes rolled, and she said with a lifted eyelid, "As your mother, I do consider your feelings. If his family can offer a 300,000 yuan bride price, that would be fine. I'm not greedy for money. I just want to test if he really likes you. If he won't even spend 300,000, how can I rest assured?" In my ears, I heard her thoughts. "If this ruined girl can really bring back 300,000, it doesn't matter if she marries a pig or a dog. Precious and I can buy an apartment in the city, and who cares what anyone says?" That night, I invited Harry to my house. By my calculations, it was time for the pigs to be slaughtered. Harry is very timid. After my brother scared him with a fierce glare, he refused to come to my house no matter what, but he still wanted to take advantage of me, so he arranged to meet me in the village cornfield. When he saw me arrive, his eyes were as slimy as a snake's, and his hands began to wander all over my body. I gently pushed his hands away and cooed, "Honey, don't be in such a hurry, the night is long, let's chat first." Harry wasn't too pleased, but he reluctantly agreed. Tonight was a full moon, and the moonlight was exceptionally bright, just like the night I died. I smiled and asked Harry, "Harry, do you remember your middle school classmate named Cheap?" "Rose is the name I gave myself. When I was alive, everyone called me Cheap." I'd heard the story of my name countless times from my grandmother, who despised me. When my mother was pregnant with me, she craved sour apricots and had a pointed belly. Everyone said she was definitely carrying a boy, but after 9 months, I came into the world. When they saw I was just a girl, no one in the family was happy. My grandmother burst into tears on the spot and cursed. She ate 10 of my pumpkins, and all she gave birth to was a worthless burden. "You better spit out my pumpkins." No one cared about my existence. To my mother, I was nothing but her shame. When the family planning officials came to register my name, my mother, pale-faced, pointed at me and named me Cheap. No one objected. Hearing my words, Harry grinned too. "Cheap, that pig girl, let me tell you, it's hilarious. Back then, our homeroom teacher took me to her house for a visit, and she was actually sleeping in the pigsty with the pigs, even eating with them." Harry grew more animated as he spoke. "Spittle flying, God, you have no idea how foul that pigsty smelled." I couldn't help but cover my nose. If it weren't for the teacher's visit, I would have run off right away, and we didn't see her parents either. Probably just like her, I bet," he finished with a disdainful tch. Cheap acted all high and mighty at school. The teacher saw her good grades and poor family situation and wanted to help her apply for financial aid. So annoying, I didn't even get it. But that pig girl got it for nothing. If she could sleep with pigs at home, who knows how she got that spot? I asked another question. "Was it you who reported to the principal's mailbox that Cheap and the homeroom teacher were having an inappropriate relationship?" Because of that report, I lost the last bit of hope in my life. The school expelled me without even investigating, and my homeroom teacher lost his job over the alleged misconduct. I couldn't stay at school anymore. After that home visit, Harry spread rumors all over the school, making everyone call me pig girl, pig's wife. Even my mother came to school, yanking my hair and calling me a slut. She wanted me to drop out immediately and go home. She said she hadn't even finished middle school, so why should I? I should just pack up and go take care of my brother. I turned to Harry, looking at him expectantly, but Harry didn't answer. He instinctively avoided the topic and instead asked me, "Hey baby. How do you know about Cheap anyway?" His inner voice said. When old Huang organized the class reunion, he went looking for Cheap, but her mom said she's dead. It couldn't be because of that letter I wrote, could it? Even if it is, it's not my fault. Blame her mom. I hope her mom isn't going around spreading nonsense. I got up from the haystack and stretched. The moon was bright, shining brilliantly, under the moonlight. Harry's shadow had completely transformed into the shape of a pig. I no longer spoke in a strained voice as before, my tone cold. "Ah, Harry, I used to have a former name, Cheap." Hearing my words, Harry shrank back in fear, and then he discovered that he had turned into a pig. "Cheap, didn't you die already? What exactly are you?" I replied carelessly, "Of course, I'm not human." Harry's face instantly turned deathly pale as he kept backing away. "Don't come after me for your life, go find." Before he could finish, he stumbled clumsily and crashed into the farming tools behind him. With a thud, warm blood splattered all over the ground. "Who's there?" Before I could clean up the scene, a dark figure flashed by from the side. Although I wasn't bothered by others seeing me slaughter pigs, I was afraid these people would cause trouble and distract me from my work. But seeing that I couldn't catch up, I returned home. The house was brightly lit, clearly waiting for me. As soon as I entered, my mother glanced at me and said, "So impatient, so eager, you're already tainted, yet you don't even know how to pretend." My brother chimed in from the side, "Mom's right, what kind of woman are you?" Their inner voices echoed in my head, "What if others find out you're tainted? You worthless girl, you won't be worth anything then. Once I get the 300,000 betrothal gift and buy a house, I'll have no trouble finding a wife." Covering my face, I sobbed softly. "Mom, Harry said he can't afford 300,000. When I told him about the betrothal gift, he called me a gold digger and said he wanted to break up." Hearing this, my brother's face immediately darkened. He slammed the table, his eyes wide with anger. "Cheap, you really are a worthless girl." My mother patted my brother's back and pretended to be affectionate as she stroked my hair, saying, "Daughter, what's one man? Mom will introduce you to a few better ones." With my daughter's beauty, how could you worry about not getting married? Feigning gratitude, I replied, "Okay, I'll listen to you, Mom." I could clearly feel my mother's hand gently stroking my hair. When I was a child, this was what I longed for the most. Just a simple pat on the head. At first, my life wasn't so difficult. But after my grandmother and father died in a flash flood, my mother remarried. Back then, she only forced me to work and take care of my newborn brother, but she still let me go to school, until one day, my stepfather's hand slipped under my skirt. From then on, I truly became cheap. Thinking of this, I chopped the meat with even more force. The night was quiet, except for the sound of my chopping. Without turning my head, I said, "Mom, I know you're there." My mother awkwardly stepped out from behind the door. "Was it you tonight?" I asked her. My mother's voice trembled slightly. "So what if it was? I really don't know what you've learned all these years outside, but you actually dared to kill." I didn't turn on the light, but it was clear. On the wooden board lay a 400-pound fat pig. My mother's voice choked, and she was so frightened she collapsed onto the floor. She pointed at me, then at the pig, unable to utter a single word. I giggled and said, "Mom, the pig I raised is ready for slaughter again." Because I could hear people's inner thoughts, I had long realized it was my mother. She didn't want to make a scene either, as spreading this matter would be disastrous. From her reaction just now, it was clear she still didn't know I was already dead. As for Harry's side of the story, she probably spoke too quickly, her hatred too intense. Whenever she mentioned me, it was to curse me. I helped my mother up from the floor. Her lips were trembling with fear, completely devoid of her usual fierceness. "Mom, don't be afraid. This is the celestial pig I've been raising. This meat is divine flesh. Eating it can cure all diseases and instantly make you 10 years younger. Weren't you wondering what I've been doing outside? I make a living with this pig slaughtering skill." My mom clearly didn't believe me, her eyes fixed tightly on my blood-stained hands. "Cheap, have you gone mad? Stop spouting such nonsense and tell me what really happened." I sighed. "Oh, Mom, why won't you believe me? Let me cook a piece for you to try. I sliced off a small piece of pork shoulder and directly placed it into boiling water to cook. This pork originally seemed no different from ordinary pork, but once it hit the boiling water, it released a strange, aromatic meat fragrance. The scent wormed its way straight into her brain like a little insect, suddenly, as if gone mad. My mom plunged both hands into the scalding water, fishing out the half-cooked pork and stuffing it into her mouth. Her skin blistered and cracked from the boiling water, and her mouth was covered with blisters from her greed. The moment she finished eating the pork, she immediately snapped back to her senses, looking bewildered at her hands, now covered in peeled skin from the scalding. The shock was so intense she didn't even feel the pain. I reached out and wiped her mouth. Mom, it's fine. After eating divine flesh, what's a little scalding? Some people without legs have even grown new ones after eating this meat. Sure enough, before long, my mom's burns had completely healed. Not only that, but her skin had also become moist and radiant, with far fewer wrinkles. My mom was utterly convinced. I said, Mom, although divine flesh is precious, I can raise celestial pigs. We can sell this meat and buy an apartment for my brother, then, finding him a wife will be a piece of cake. I cooked another piece of meat for her. She ate it with greasy lips, mumbling, It's still better to have a daughter. Who would have thought, cheap, you'd turn out so accomplished. Just as I was about to leave, her eyes rolled slyly, and she closed all the doors and windows, whispering to me conspiratorially, Don't tell your brother about this yet. He can't keep his mouth shut, and if he blabs, it could ruin everything. But I heard her true thoughts. With divine flesh available, what use is that good-for-nothing? Telling him would just mean one more person to share the meat with. How wonderful. No one in this family has changed. The next day, a crowd gathered around our house, everyone chattering excitedly and questioning my mom. What delicious food were you cooking last night? It smelled so amazing. It was meat. I definitely smelled meat. Aunt Hong, don't be stingy. We're not here to steal. We'll pay for it. Even my brother chimed in, Mom, what were you sneakily eating last night? Why didn't you call me? I was dying of curiosity. When I went to the kitchen, there was nothing left. My mom looked displeased, blocking everyone outside. I tugged at her clothes and said, Mom, since they want to buy, let's sell. Besides, this divine flesh is so incredible. Just that small piece we cooked yesterday made the whole village smell it. There's no hiding it. Fine then. My mom grumbled under her breath. Then she raised her voice and shouted, Since everyone wants to try it, I'm willing to do business. But my family's meat is no ordinary meat. I won't sell it for less than 30,000 per pound. One villager cursed, Are you trying to fool us like we're idiots? Even king crab doesn't cost 30,000 per pound. What kind of meat is this? Divine flesh? My mom retorted sharply. That's right, this is divine flesh. Another person sneered. Oh, with your family's circumstances. Divine flesh, more like rat meat. That really set my mom off. She yelled, Last night, the kitchen god appeared to me in a dream. She said I've been a good person for 10 lifetimes and, seeing me suffer in this life, specially rewarded me with this celestial pig. Have you heard of martial pig? The heavenly pig is a celestial being from the heavens, and this is divine meat. The kitchen god's wife is the local deity worshipped in this small mountain village, where few have received much education, so they firmly believe it. Still, some remain skeptical. While my mother was speaking, I had already cut off a pair of pig's ears and scalded them with boiling water. The aroma of the meat drifted into everyone's nostrils along with the steam rising from the hot water. No one paid any attention to what my mother was saying. Every eye was fixed intently on those 2 pairs of pig's ears. Pork is the embodiment of resentment. The more evil a person has committed, the more they are drawn to this resentment. The person I've been searching for. I've already spotted you. My mother cut in, reaching into the boiling water with both hands to retrieve the pig's ears. Without any seasoning, she voraciously stuffed the pair of ears into her mouth. See for yourselves if you don't believe me. Not long after eating the meat, the burns on her hands healed instantly, without even a scar. The villagers had long been salivating over it, and a few from better-off families were already itching to try. Give me 1 gram, I want half kg. Since I'm buying more, cut mine first. What's the rush? Line up properly, everyone will get some, although 30,000 yuan isn't a small amount. Most were willing to spend a few thousand to taste a small piece and satisfy their craving. Those who were better off ate more, yet they didn't know. This meat is addictive. People came to our house in a steady stream to buy meat, but the person I was waiting for never showed up again. It seems I still underestimated his abilities. Logically, he should have been the one most unable to resist my pork. I pouted. feeling somewhat disheartened. I had really wanted to see him terrified out of his wits at the sight of me, but he vanished in the blink of an eye. In the kitchen, my mother and my younger brother were wrestling with each other. "Mom, I'm your own son, what's wrong with giving me a piece of this divine meat? What if eating it makes me smarter, and I can make you rich and bring honor to our ancestors? You think just because you're called precious, you're actually precious. I've raised you for over 20 years, do you think I don't know you're a good-for-nothing? How can I waste this meat on you? It's 30,000 yuan per kg, you're not even worth that much if I sold you, you." Seeing that he couldn't win the argument, my brother tried to snatch the pig's knuckle from my mother's arms. Pushing and shoving, the two started fighting again. I helped my mother up from where she'd been pushed to the ground and scolded him. "Brother, what are you doing? How could you hit Mom? She suffered so much to raise us, unlike you." I only feel heartache for her, struck by the son she had doted on all his life. My mother felt a chill in her heart. She rolled her eyes and said, "Raising you was worse than raising a dog. At least a dog wags its tail when it sees me. Instead, I end up getting beaten by my own son. My fate is so bitter, all these years." My brother had never experienced anything like this. He never expected that I would side with the mother who supposedly hated me so much. I could hear his inner thoughts. "Mom, aren't I your favorite?" "No, silly brother, Mom has always loved herself the most. She only loved you because you were useful to her. It's just a pity that his not-so-bright mind couldn't grasp this." My brother opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. In the end, he kicked the kitchen door and ran off. Only after my brother had left did my mother anxiously turn to me and say, "Daughter, what should we do? The divine meat is almost gone. Didn't you say you could raise heavenly pigs? How do we raise them now?" I also wore a troubled expression. "Mom, why did you sell it so fast? Heavenly pigs aren't easy to find." My mother kept shaking my arm, her tone urgent. "Didn't you say you knew how to raise heavenly pigs?" I covered my face and said, "The heavenly pig must be chosen from adult males who have never eaten heavenly pork, but now everyone in the entire village has eaten heavenly pork." My mother's eyes darted, and she said, "No, there's still one person in the village who hasn't eaten it." Human greed and desire are the most terrifying things in the world. To monopolize the immortal meat, the villagers worked together to seal off the village. The village was originally a small basin in a remote mountainous area with only one exit. By blocking that road, no one could enter again. No matter what happened in the village, no one outside would ever know. My mother was selling meat at the door. No, it should be said she was selling bones. The immortal meat was running low, so my mother hid it to eat alone and sold the bones instead. Even so, business was booming. Leo, the cripple in our village, ate the meat, and his legs were healed. The village chief's foolish son ate the immortal meat and was no longer foolish. These people were practically kneeling at my mother's feet, calling her the reincarnation of an immortal, and my mother, adorned in gold and silver, was radiant and looked no older than 30. The entire mountain village seemed like a paradise on earth. Today was the day for the pig to be slaughtered again. My mother took me to the pigsty where I used to live. As I approached, a foul stench assaulted my nostrils. My mother pinched her nose, kicked the pig, and cursed under her breath. "I feed you so much good food every day. Why aren't you gaining weight? Useless thing, truly useless." The pig pawed at my mother's clothes, tears glistening in its eyes. "Mom, it's me, I'm precious." My brother's mouth still had traces of pig feed, and his already chubby body had become grotesquely obese. In recent days, he had been raised entirely as a pig, force-fed countless buckets of slop by my mother every day. If there wasn't enough at home, she would collect it from others. When my brother saw me, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes, and he charged at me. "It's all your fault, it's all your fault. Turn me back now." I didn't move, but my mother reacted faster than I did. Being younger now was great. Her kicks were stronger too. With one kick, she sent my brother, no, the pig, tumbling into the feeding trough. That night, under the cover of darkness, my mother tied up my brother and told me to raise him as the heavenly pig. In just a few days, my brother's and my identities had completely swapped. I became her precious, and my brother became the useless one, but it was still far from enough. Late at night, I lay awake, staring blankly. Beings like me don't sleep. When lost in thought, I often recall the past. Hatred doesn't fade, it only accumulates. Just as I was lost in thought, someone wrapped a belt around my neck. The voice behind me was so familiar it made my blood boil. His grip was strong, and I could even hear the crack of my neck bones dislocating. This was the second time I had heard such a crack. The person behind me gritted his teeth and said, I killed you once, and I can kill you hundreds more times. A mist clouded my vision. Once again, I had been killed. My memories drifted back to when I was still alive. After being expelled from school that year, I was too young to find work in town. So my mother made me farm at home. The heat in July and August was so intense it felt like my skin was peeling off. Yet, it was one of the busiest times of the year. To earn 18 yuan as escape money to flee the mountains, I secretly went into the hills to gather herbs, hiding it from my mother. That was the first time Bob violated me. He had discovered my whereabouts and followed me deep into the mountains. Afterward, I ran home in disgrace, wearing blood-stained pants. I knew my mother and the others would scold me, but I truly had nowhere else to go. I will never forget that look in their eyes until the day I die. My mother glanced at me casually, looking me up and down, then said, "You've been a cheap little thing since you were small, no surprise there, just a shame you can't fetch a good price." My brother, who wasn't much older at the time, clapped his hands and sang a song he'd made up, "Cheap is a money loser, cheap is a money loser." My mother took me to Bob's house and started shouting curses at the door. "Bob, you fat pig. You took my daughter's innocence and now you won't own up to it. Who knows, she might already be carrying your seed." I hung my head low, surrounded by a crowd of onlookers there for the show. Bob was famously single in the area. Because of his extreme obesity, no woman in the village was willing to marry him. Wow, Bob's something else, scoring himself a pretty 16-year-old wife just like that. James's daughter looked so quiet and well-behaved. Who knew she was so filthy in private? Bob never showed his face. He knew how fierce my mother could be, and if she got her hands on him, he'd be lucky to escape with his life. Later, to avoid trouble, he secretly sent someone to give my mother $300 as an apology. At the time, I was relieved. Thank goodness Bob couldn't afford the bride price, or my mother would have really sold me to him. I still had a chance to run away, so a few days later, I sneaked up the mountain again. Unexpectedly, I ran into Bob again. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged me down the mountain like a trophy. I'd clearly heard our neighbor Lucy say that Bob was going to the county town to sell sweet potatoes at the market today. But why? Why? At the foot of the mountain were the fields the village had cultivated together. Everyone was still busy working in the fields at that time. Bob's really living the good life. What a sweet couple. James's daughter is just disgraceful. If she were my daughter, I'd want to drown her in a pig cage. I also heard our neighbor Lucy laughing. I just mentioned today that Bob was going to the market, and James's daughter immediately looked like she couldn't bear to be apart and packed her bamboo basket to leave. Seeing how anxious she was, I called Bob back. Bob took me home and hid me in his cellar. My mother came looking for me during that time, but he told her I was disgusted by him and had run off to the city. He liked to wrap his belt around my neck. That's how I died. Everyone was an accomplice, everyone was a pig. This body is no different from an ordinary person's, except I don't feel any pain. I didn't resist. If Bob had been more careful, he would have noticed I neither breathed nor had a heartbeat. Bob dismembered me and threw me into the river ditch. But every piece of my flesh can regenerate into a new me. The village was pitch black. Only my house was lit. A fire was burning in the yard. A dark, dense crowd was packed into our small courtyard. "Give me meat, give me meat, give me meat." Everyone raised their arms and shouted. Their faces were pale, but their bodies were grotesquely fat. My mother had no intention of handing over the immortal meat. Desire keeps growing, and my mother was definitely the one who had eaten the most meat. Hearing the villagers' cries, she finally emerged from the house, her lips greasy and shiny, holding a pig's leg in her hands, but in everyone's eyes, she had completely taken on the form of a pig. In the darkness, she glowed with a golden light. Even though she was still alive, her entire body emitted an irresistible aroma of meat. The villagers had completely lost control and rushed forward to devour my mother. In the crazed crowd, only one person remained clear-headed, Bob. That day, he had been drawn to my house by the scent of meat, but after seeing me alive, he was so frightened he ran back home. He hadn't eaten a single piece of the pork, so he was still sane, but what good did that do? I couldn't help but laugh out loud, yet tears streamed uncontrollably from my eyes. I said with a smile, "It's useless." No matter how many times he tried, I still stood firmly before him, until the frenzied pigs began to butt against his legs and tear at his body. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with unwillingness. Since he didn't want to become a pig, then he could just become pig feed. "Tonight is another full moon, extra," a familiar electronic voice echoed in my mind. "Host, The system has detected that you have exceeded the mission requirements. I paused for a moment before replying, it's fine, I've taken my revenge, it doesn't matter if I can't be reborn. The system seemed to sigh. In truth, everything that happened was within my plan. The 7 pigs I killed earlier were only to avoid arousing the system's suspicion. Those who could be deceived by meat tainted with resentment were never good people to begin with. They carried the weight of my life. I couldn't help but ask, System, will you be punished? Hearing it sigh, I couldn't help but regret my impulsiveness, as if it hadn't expected me to speak this way. The system paused for a moment before saying, I won't be punished, but you will be. That's good, it continued, according to the laws of this world. The punishment imposed on you by the server is to destroy the misogynistic world and permanently transfer Rose to a matriarchal world. After it finished speaking, a blinding white light flashed before my eyes. Faintly, I seemed to hear the system say one last thing, you've suffered so much, from now on, live only a happy life. Rose, after hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section, looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.